saintly thoughts on faith and sports. And we thought in the middle of this conversation, it would be really, really important to hear from some of the wisdom of the church. And so we collected a group of quotes from, well, let Deacon Matt tell you about that.
Well, going back to the first topic, I think one of the keys here to accompany families well and to try to find that happy medium, as one of our guests said, to work creatively, to encourage parents to take their faith more seriously, is to see that it's not a choice between something good and something bad. It's not a choice between something holy and something secular, whether to go to RE or practice. So what we thought we'd do to shine a light on this sort of the holiness of athleticism and the holiness of sports is to go right to St. Pope John Paul II and some of his quotable quotes on the compatibility between sports and faith. So let's go to this first quote from John Paul. So he says, in fact, every sport at both the amateur and competitive level requires basic human qualities such as rigorous preparation, continual training, awareness of one's personal limits, fair competition, acceptance of precise rules, respect for one's opponent, and a sense of solidarity and unselfishness. Thank God there's a period there. That is a long sentence. Without these qualities, sport would be reduced to mere effort and to a questionable, soulless demonstration of physical strength. When sports are played and understood in the right way, they are an extraordinary expression of a person's best inner energies and of his ability to overcome difficulties, set goals, reach through sacrifice, generosity, and determination in facing the difficulties of competition, period. Wow, those are some long sentences. But
I think I didn't hold my breath doing that.
I know, I was like digging deep here. Come on, lungs. So I need to be more athletic, I think, to do this show. So at any rate, what's he getting at? He's trying to show that, one, we're all made in the image and likeness of God, which includes not just this intrinsic dignity that we have, but that our very lives and our bodies and how we use those bodies. And this is the same Pope who gave us the theology of the body, that series of audiences that became the wonderful book, compendium on human sexuality. Here he is focusing on the body in play, the body in action, and how just being active, being physical, being competitive actually resonates with the gospel, which reveals to us that Jesus Christ is the human person most fully alive. So when we find ourselves competing, when we find ourselves being sacrificial, being generous, being a team player, these are all Christ-like qualities. And when we do these things, we're not only doing something phenomenal as a human being or as an athlete, we're really doing something that's phenomenal as a Christian. Now, the question is, and this goes back to how evangelized are those kids and parents, right, that we're talking with? Do they see that connection with the Christian faith? And that's where we need to be a little more explicit. And I wouldn't start out by sharing slides of St. Pope John Paul II, although that could be helpful. But what I would do is to try to talk about that connection in your own words. And we're going to talk about some accompanying actions. As we know, actions speak louder than words often, that really drive home the point that, look, when your child is out there playing or competing, God's there. God is doing something. God is trying to as a part of all of this activity. And what we want to help parents do, we want to help children do, is call that to mind, so that in the event that they're not coming to some of these RE sessions, whatever, we're still able to send them out with a message and a way to communicate a message that what is happening here is all for the glory of God. Any thoughts, Steve, or should we go on to the next quote?
Let's go on to the next one. I think you said it very well, Deacon Matt.
Okay.
Deacon Matt's up there now.
I am. This is like the Brady Bunch shot here.
All right, that was the first one. Let's go to the next one.
So we're going to look at the yellow parts here. Not that the white parts aren't important. We're just trying to keep this short as we move through this particular topic. Short but impactful. Here, John Paul's saying the correct practice of sport must be accompanied by practicing the virtues of temperance and sacrifice. One of the things that we can do to help engage parents in communicating about this, about meaning bringing your child to RE and the benefits of RE, the outcomes of attending youth ministry and other such ministries in the church, is that it encourages growth in virtue. And parents, unless we give them sometimes an outline of what this can look like, they might say, oh, that sounds nice, but so what? So when we can talk about, no, growth in virtue has real life impacts, real life applications, real meaning for your children. For example, you say little Sally's in soccer practice. Well, when Sally gets fouled or tripped up and she doesn't strike the opponent or whatever, she doesn't get mad, that's practicing temperance. That's a virtue that Sally's growing in, and God's helping her grow in that. And I'm telling you, just having conversations like this, it takes, and parents see this too. And this is why I go back to my first point about all of getting parents to work with us. It's all about the level of evangelization that they've experienced. And we can't presume they've had any, because most parents, and this is speaking from my own experience, when we talk about sports, they automatically put it in a separate category from faith and religion. It's about as far away from faith and religion as maybe politics, maybe not that far, but it's far. And so we have to bring that view all into view through the same lens. And again, virtues have real impact. That wakens, I mean, you should see that light bulbs go off over parents' heads when you talk this way about so-and-so is in cheerleading or in sports or whatever, and they're actually growing in virtue. It's a wonderful thing. And finally, the yellow at the bottom. While playing sports, Christians also find help in developing the cardinal virtues: fortitude, temperance, prudence, and justice. So again, just reemphasizing, this isn't just some secular pursuit that's happening out here. When seen in the right way, and again, this is working with parents, when helping to model and speak to and affirm at home that there is a religious underpinning to these kinds of activities, then there need not be such a separation. We need not see it be like, oh man, sports is just so contra, so against faith, again, sort of forcing this distinction that doesn't need to be there, and in fact causes more harm than it does good.
We've got some great comments. We're going to pause at the end of the slides and sort of engage with these comments, but keep those coming. We love the interaction here. Let's move to the next slide.
And just so you know, we only had this and one more slide, so we'll get to the feedback here, which is great. Again, looking at the yellow portion, this is Saint Pope John Paul saying, "It is also your task to proclaim and to witness to the humanizing power of the gospel with regard to the practice of sports." How often have we seen as ministers, how often have we seen supporting sports through like evangelizing ways as part of our ministry? Now, maybe in youth ministry, you're used to going out to sporting events and being there on the sidelines and being visible and being supportive. And we're going to talk about that as a wonderful way to accompany families. But maybe if you're a DRE, or maybe if you're an adult faith formation coordinator, or maybe if you're in some other kind of ministry in the parish, this really hasn't crossed your mind to somehow see as part of my scope of discipleship or scope of ministry is trying to bring the gospel to sports. And notice the directionality here. It's bringing the gospel to where the sports is happening. It's not saying, hey, sports, come on in here so that you can get the gospel. And this speaks to that entire paradigm shift that Francis is trying to work, which is we cannot survive as a church that tries to maintain the status quo. We must be a missionary church, which means we must go out, and that going out is the most fundamental action of accompaniment. You can't accompany people if you're not going out to meet them where they are, and that'll lead us into our last topic. So if there aren't any thoughts from you, Steve, we can go to that last slide.
Yeah, let me see if I can get to it.
There you go. It says here in the yellow, every Christian is called to become a strong athlete of Christ. Every Christian. And this brings to mind also St. Paul talking about running the race, right? And that is a faithful and courageous witness to the gospel. But to succeed in this, he must persevere in prayer, be trained in virtue, and follow the divine master in everything. So this calls to mind the importance of us as ministers to pray and discern what's the best course of action here with these families. You know, when is it to force the decision right up front, this is what you have to do, or you're not going to receive those sacraments, or you're not going to, matriculate into the next grade, or whatever the situation is? Or is it to start getting to know these families, spending some time hearing what's going on with them? Why? So that you can help facilitate more of an encounter with Christ through the church, to work that evangelization of mom and dad so that they can become co-workers with you and modeling these virtues at home. And also when they do choose practice, sometimes over RE, you can have a little more confidence that maybe mom and dad might say a prayer with the child before the practice, or talk about it in terms of their faith afterwards.